do the audience a favor, and we'll do some introductions first, if that sounds good. So, Craig, if you want to go ahead and I'm finally getting to learn here what you do for work.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm starting up basically a total wellness online organization. So similar to the group that you're working on, basically a mastermind for typically men to come in and develop themselves, building a foundation, an area for connection, and helping them with expansion. So kind of going through that progression and helping guys from wherever they're at in that process, and helping men to grow and connect.
Cool, man. Jack?
My name is Jack Moran, founder of Ecological Improvements, serial entrepreneur. I'm doing a podcast also where I host called the Shaking Hands podcast. We talk about entrepreneurship. So those are my main projects I'm working on right now.
If you guys want like a really easy to watch and like genuinely exhilarating podcast, I would definitely watch Jack's and not mine. But mine's a little more off the cuff. It's like the Wild West out here.
Appreciate the plug.
For sure, man. Jack and I's story was kind of interesting because we met quite a ways back when you were working for a solar company doing door-to-door sales. Tell me a little bit about like what the door-to-door sales experience was like and how that's translated into what you do now.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that's like probably the single most important experience that I've had in my entrepreneurial career. I was working at like this kind of typical corporate job before that, trying to get experience. I knew I wanted to start my own business, but you know, this guy that was a mentor to me, he was making a bunch of money. So I'm like, if I go work for him, maybe I'll go make a bunch of money. And I had an environmental science background. I'm working in a finance office, and I really wanted to get better at sales, which I wasn't really getting the training that I wanted there. So I wasn't making much money at all. I was like commuting 2 hours each way back and forth to work, living in my grandmother's house, like not in a good place in my life. And my buddy, who like didn't do as well in college, you know, got this door knocking job selling solar, and I was kind of like brushing him off, and he was like, dude, you should come work down here. And I'm like, no way. I thought I had the sexy job. And all of a sudden, like, this kid's making like 7, 8, 9, 10 grand a month selling solar door to door, and I'm barely scraping by, making like $500 a week, busting my ass doing finance. So I ended up quitting the job, and I got the solar gig. And at first, he was living in Florida. I think you remember Sebastian. He was there for a little bit, wild card. He was living in Florida. So he's like, dude, I'm living in this girl's house. Like, you're completely good. I got extra space for you. Like, come down and live, and like, you can work with me on solar. And so I quit the job, and like a week later, I was down in Florida with him on this solar gig. And I get to the house, and like, in typical Sebastian form, this girl's like, who are you? Like, I'm not welcome in this house. I'm there for like 3 days. It's extremely uncomfortable. Like, and so we went to the Tampa office or whatever, and like, think I made a good impression with Vince, who was the, you know, founder of the company, and saw me as an asset, but realized very quickly, and I think he knew Sebastian pretty well, that I was in a situation that was not sustainable. So he's like, listen, like, we want to keep you around, but you're not going to succeed here. We're going to ship you back up to Rhode Island, and we have an office. You can live in the office, because it was straight commission sales. And so we had a lot of turnover, because people, they go like a month, they don't make any money, and then they're like, fuck this. But in my head, I'm like, if I want to start my own business, I'm going to have to do this eventually. And it's like sink or swim. So no matter what, I am going to find a way to succeed at doing door-to-door sales. So I ended up going up and living within a week, they flew me back up to Rhode Island, moved into this office. I was living on this like mattress floor, or air mattress on the floor in the ghetto of Pawtucket. I had another roommate with me. I don't know if you remember that like old dude that was working for the company.
He was living in the office with you?
I woke up 2 mornings in a row, and this dude was like stroking it. Like,
Shut the fuck up.
Like in an office space, literally 3-4 inches away. Like literally the air mattress is next to me, and this is a grown ass man like yanking his. And I got a video of it, and I'm like, I'm like, send it to Sebastian. I'm like, dude, this is fucked up. I'm like, I don't want to blow the dude's spot up. He's like, what, bro? Like, I'm sending this to the bosses right now. And he got fired, luckily. So it was like, so I had the office to myself after that. But it took me like a little while. I had to figure out like the resilience of like getting denied, getting the door slammed in your face, figure out the sales process, figure out how to have success, like get through all that major adversity, which was a big learning experience. Then like getting quick interest in sales, like learning like the psychological principles of sales, how to get someone's interest, like earning their trust, like when you just show up on their doorstep. So a lot of like good business fundamentals from that. And then once I started having success and making money, I got some of my buddies to come. So then I learned like leadership and building a sales organization, running a sales team. So all those things, and it was all eat what you kill. So no one else was giving me anything. Like it was all, I was getting income based on what I did. There was no baseline salary. So I had to put up or I was not paying my bills. So all those things were like very congruent with what the input requirements are as an entrepreneur. So when I did finally go off and start my business, it was very similar and a lot easier because I had that experience. So that was kind of a long form like story of why that was a profound experience for me.
I think it's so important for people too to like read between the lines on what you just said there. Is like to give my perspective. Again, perspective is everything, man. And from my perspective at that point in my life, when he's going through the trenches of that, I'm trying to start this company up, Blades Marketing, in my parents' basement. And I'm down there in the winter, you know, thinking like, oh, I've got it rough and like whatever it is. And I used to I would drape a blanket over me. And mind you, this is just like a cement basement. And I'd be down there in the winter and I'd have a little space heater like underneath. And about every like 10 to 15 minutes, I'd have to put my hands down there to thaw them out so I could keep typing on my keyboard. Like it was just fucking, it was freezing down there, dude. And I'm sitting there, you know, on these Zoom calls. And again, and this is what I really want to like drive home for people is I'm sitting there on a Zoom call looking at Jack in one of these, you know, we'd do like these team Zoom calls or like they're reading a book or something.
Yeah. The culture calls.
Culture calls. Yeah. And I was working with that solar company as a social media management or whatever it was. And, like I'm looking at Jack through a screen and I knew Jack and we had some kind of like side conversations and stuff. And, I had no idea that any of that was going on in his life, you know, and there's kind of, I think, two key takeaways from that. And that's like, number one is like, don't ever just look at someone and think like, oh, they just got it going on or, oh, that's easy or whatever it is. You know, I think social media really plays a role in that, but also like understanding that just, you know, like, again, you don't ever know what's going on with somebody.
Yeah.
It's like you're looking at them through a screen or like, I think people see my Instagram page and they're like, this dude's just fucking wired out. He's like working out all the time, he's either shooting guns, chasing women, making money, or like fucking doing cool shit. And it's like, in all actuality, like, you know,
That was like 4 shoots.
Yeah, it's like that's like a video shoot. That's like you're seeing a little snippet.
Yeah.
But Craig, you've gotten kind of like, are you semi-new to the content creation scene, or have you been doing it for a while?
I think I'm just more serious about it now. Like it's an integral part in like each of my days at this point. Whereas before it was just more so like something fun to do on the side.
I think something that I've noticed with like the moment, I don't even know how we came to follow each other on Instagram. But
I noticed that I think I followed you from being on his podcast, and I just aligned with a lot of what you said. So
okay, so like very rarely will I follow someone, especially now. Like I work in social media, so in my free time, dude, it's the last thing I want to fucking do. Like I've thought about getting a flip track phone, like just I hate it. But every once in a while, I'll go on to watch specific people. You're one of those guys though. Like I followed you back, and I'm thinking to myself like, oh, just like another business connect, you know, like we'll do a podcast and like some cool shit, like whatever. And, but I started like watching your stories in the morning and like, dude, I've been actually like religiously watching like what you're doing in the morning for some reason, because you're just like, I don't know. I saw some video of you like just walking outside in the field. You're like getting sunshine, doing this, doing that. And I'm like, dude, this can be, I'm sitting there like slamming a Red Bull or like drinking coffee. And I'm just like, fuck me, man. Like this dude's routine and like his morning, at least the start to your day, looks very not necessarily calculated. Like it just looks like you're kind of like, you know, I'm going to kind of embrace the morning for what it is. And that's like the world's coming awake. I'm waking up and just
flows.
Yeah. Like walk me through like what I'm seeing again through that screen and what your perspective is on that.
For sure. I think I just enjoy connecting with people with similar interests. So if I'm able to put out parts of my day that are like routine, or whether I, like going for a walk is like a part of my day, whether I do that early in the morning, in the afternoon, or later in the day, just having those like little moments of trying to like be present in whatever I'm doing, whether that's going for a walk or journaling or working out or, going on phone calls with people. I think just sharing those things and getting other people's perspectives on them. I also find it helpful in like the engagement I get on my stuff is like input that people have of recommendations, or like if I'm posting about a book, somebody recommends another one in that area. And I feel like I can learn better from sharing what I do and kind of getting some feedback and trying to like evolve my own process throughout that.
You have a very stoic demeanor.
I get that.
Just from my first impression of you. Mm-hmm. Which it's funny to me because it's like there's almost kind of two sides of the blade you got to sharpen. And I think that, are you in business for yourself or?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one thing for me is I think people do it in different orders. Like everybody's a little bit different, and it's just based upon your genetics, your predispositions, your upbringing, what have you, your experiences in life. Is some people develop one side of the blade before the other. And you seem to have that sense of like being present. You have that, that harmonious like thought process. Like I can just tell, again, you have a stoic demeanor. Whereas I think that other people are developed through chaos. And like, I can just tell, dude, like in the way, like we definitely, I think, sharpen that side of the blade first, and I think that for me, and I'm 26 years old, I'm still trying to find that ability to be more present and that the thought processes that go into that and such. But I think that you have definitely a solid skill set. I don't know how long you've been in business, but I want to hear more about what it is that you do.
I mean, basically just trying to share like the experiences and insights that I've gained on my own journey. So like growing up, just watching like a whole bunch of YouTube and like reading books, and I had just good mentors growing up in terms of like coaches, and I don't know, just always being curious about how people were able to become successful in whatever field, and also like maintaining that success, which is why I tried to learn more about like total wellness as opposed to just like one aspect of it, like just being like, nobody wants to just be a dumb jock. Like you need to have relationships and have your finances in order and kind of like become the best that you can through multiple areas. While it may be a bit more challenging, I think that if you leave out certain areas, then you're, you need to have a good foundation or you won't be able to continue on.
That's very interesting. Go into your backstory, man. I mean, I'm curious, like what's led you to this point? How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 26. Growing up, I was just always an athlete and trying to make money in different ways and kind of like do things that I enjoyed, like picking up hobbies outside of sports and just going to school. So like started up like a small clothing brand like early on, and just knew I wanted to do something in the entrepreneurial space eventually. So luckily I'm starting that up now, and gained some insights in like working at like gyms and doing like landscaping, like small entrepreneurship stuff when I was younger, and then growing into, so I went to University of South Carolina, got, my business education, if you will, there, and learned about like investments and wealth management and that sort of thing. So that's where I went initially after college, was working with a bank and then working with financial advisors, portfolio managers, and that sort of thing. And then decided that I just wanted to get that foundational knowledge of finances and how that works and how to progress in that area. And then once I felt like I had a good foundation, building out my own thing towards total wellness and kind of like ascending the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you will.
Awesome. Jack, go into your background. Give me some insight into what your upbringing looked like and how the Jack we know today came to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a couple main principles that are like definitive, like principles that, define my current personality and how I operate. And there are some things that are good and there are things that are bad. I would say like growing up, my parents were split up. It wasn't like the prettiest split. And there was a lot of turmoil within that. And through that, we were moving a lot. I think I lived in 13 different houses when I was a kid. And kind of some extreme things going on. And so through that, I learned like a lot of emotional control, like stress control. But so that is helpful in entrepreneurship, just as far as like when it comes to decision making and like adversity, it doesn't like things that a lot of people would think are like big problems. Like I'm very nonchalant about, which can be a good thing or a bad thing in some situations. But then also, psychologically, I'd say one of kind of my anchors is through that turmoil, I've like gotten addicted almost to this like affirmation. And there's definitely like I don't know if it's a self-esteem issue or something, but like kind of feeling like never good enough. So that again works out well when you're trying to be successful because you're always chasing more and holding yourself to a high standard, but can be like toxic to the relationships around you and the people around you when you're always chasing more and always wanting more and not being satisfied. So through my upbringing, like those are kind of the main like principles I would say that are definitive today. And I'm trying to figure out like how to be more present in the moment and more satisfied in the moment and not always chasing after the next best thing. But then, that happiness comes with a sacrifice and success. So you got to have a balance between the two. So I would say those are kind of like the main like principles of my upbringing that would relate to my entrepreneurial existence.
Yep.
Yeah. Would you say that the instances of, I guess to me, it seems like a lot of entrepreneurs get into that space to, prove that they can do something great and kind of contribute to society and also, I guess, have control over their environment a bit more. And it sounds like if you're moving all the time and there's stuff like that going on outside of what you can control, to me, entrepreneurship is a way to like have control over certain aspects of your life, whether it's gaining more freedom or just kind of driving into that. What would you?
Yeah, it's a good point. I've never thought of it like that, but I do definitely have something with control. Like I don't like to be like backed into a corner. I get very uncomfortable when I have like responsibility, which again could be like an issue for relationships. Like when I get tied down with commitments, it makes me feel immobile. And I go into like almost a fight or flight mode. Mm-hmm. So through entrepreneurship, I have been able to get that control, which I think that I like, that I'm very mobile. Like I don't even like to sign a year-long lease rent because I feel like locked down to something. So yeah, that could be something that is like come from that lack of control in that chaotic environment as a child that has like led to that principle, which again, in entrepreneurship, it's good to be flexible. It's good to be mobile. But there's collateral damage of those like psychological principles as well. So, and I've realized like everyone's shit stinks in some way. Like there's like stuff that everyone has that is like are anchors that are experiences that have happened to them typically at an early age that are profound experiences that define their personality and their existence now. And some of those things are beneficial to their lives. Others are like anchor them backwards and limit them. And I think it's important as a person who's trying to grow to just think about like so I'm 27 years old. I always forget how old I am. I think I'm 27. I'm 27 years old, and that's like a lot of years, right? That's a lot of days lived. But if you kind of like break down and think about like your life, you can really pinpoint like probably 10 to 30 definitive experiences that have happened to you, like memories that you remember that define who you are today. And those are like, again, that's a profound experience that has been ingrained and anchored within your psyche that like creates the box or the reality that defines who you are. So I think it's important to do like a manifest of those experiences and say like, okay, what are these experiences? How did they affect me then? And what impact do they have on me today and how I make decisions? And of those, which ones are having a positive impact on my life and which ones are having a negative impact on my life? And then if you can identify those first and have the awareness to realize like these things that happened to me are why I am today, and you want to change those negative aspects of your life, it makes it a lot easier to have that awareness of those experiences, because then there's a million practices out there to start like overcoming those traumas and reworking that mental makeup that you have, because your thoughts are what define, this is a Joe Dispenza quote, like your thoughts are what define your personal reality, or your personality, and your personality is what defines your personal reality. So if you want to change your reality, you need to have the awareness of how you're thinking, what your thoughts are, and then change those thoughts. You can't expect to change your reality without modifying those thoughts, which have been affected by previous experiences. Sorry, that was kind of a tangent. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. I think that's helpful. And a little bit on that, do you guys have any experiences where, I guess, something that helped lead into where you are today, like a positive, like what do you call it? Like a mastery experience where you're trying, maybe you're trying a lot of new things out, and then you finally hit something that like, you're like, wow, I can actually like do this, or like, I enjoy this experience. Do you guys have anything that kind of helped lead you to where you are in that realm?
Such a intrigue. I've never been asked that question that way.
Like a defining experience that has,
but you're saying a positive experience.
Yeah, I would say in this instance, at least a positive one. Like maybe as an athlete, you had a winning experience and you're like, wow, I can actually do this. And now I see like, my efforts that led into this is why I was successful. So I can use that and implement it in different areas. Or maybe just starting out with sales, you didn't have a lot of success and you didn't possibly see yourself as a financial success until you had that inkling and you're like, wow, I enjoy this experience.
I can't like identify one specific experience, but I think it's like a compounding effect of having results through process. And so like getting that affirmation that if I put in the work on anything and I execute like what I said I was going to do, and I hold myself accountable and I'm disciplined and I don't make excuses and I internally motivate myself, that typically the goal that I set becomes achieved. Well, in my experience, it's always happened.
Yeah. Either you get there or you stop short or readjust.
Exactly. Right. And so that like having that on a small scale, like maybe in a sport, like, practicing harder in lacrosse. So then I, got the starting position on my college lacrosse team, was a small like win that gave me more confidence. And now it's realizing this pattern. I've internalized the concept that there is nothing that I can't accomplish. It's just setting that goal, reworking it into a daily actionable plan, and then actually executing it. And as long as I do that, I'm going to hit hurdles along the way. I just have to get over those hurdles. And if I continued barreling down that path, eventually I'm going to intersect with that goal. So I'd say I can't think of one definitive experience. I can think of a bunch of compounding experiences that have created this framework that is my reality, that I live by, that is like my religion,
I think that I was about to literally say, like, basically, like, it's a compound of a multitude of experiences that I've had, like little wins that have just added up, But if I read deeper into it, and I think that like this conversation is really thought provoking to me, because when you initially said like, can you think of any moment? And my brain immediately started thinking of like potential responses, And I'm thinking to myself, like, he's going to ask about like, has there been any like really like hard, challenging moment, like negative experience I've had? That's where my brain goes. And I think that a lot of times that's what people who are just wired a certain way, that just like the true nature of ambition is the simple fact that when I look, this is why, like, if my life were me flying down a highway in a truck, if you were to look up, you'd see that my rear view mirror has been torn off. Because the reality of the fact is, when I look in my rear view, I see like, I don't really see like these wins. I don't see like all the ground I've covered. I just see like what I'm running from, if that makes any sense. It's like, I didn't want to be this helpless, insecure, scrawny kid with no money. Like, I didn't want to be all these things. And so I put the pedal to the metal and I went, and I drove out and did these things. But when you ask, like, was there like this positive experience that like reinforced that you were heading in the right direction? Like, I would have to probably sit with myself for 10, 15 minutes to really pinpoint one, because no matter what, I've had positive experiences. I've had big deals come in. I've had big months, and still I can tell you right now, like, I remember, I think that every young entrepreneur's dream, especially us like guys that like went to YouTube University type shit, is you keep hearing it. It almost gets cemented in your brain, like $10,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $10,000 a month. Like, that's the point when you make it, kind of thing. And I can tell you that it's like one of those things that I aspired to accomplish for years. And the day that it came, all I can tell you is I felt absolutely fucking nothing. All that success has ever given me is just like, rather than saying like, oh, you've come this far, again, looking in that rear view mirror, my mirror's torn the fuck off. It's like, if you got here and it took you 3 years to get here, like, how much further can you get? How much further could you have gone? It's the same with like relationships. I struggle with relationships too, and such, it's like, because every time I get, with a girl, it's going great, it's whatever, regardless of who I'm with or what the situation is, I swear to you, there is always an internal monologue going on that's like out in public or whatever. And it's like, could I get hotter? Like, could I get one that cooks even better? Like, it's just like, dude, I'm telling you, it's this sick complex that's like, nothing's ever good enough. And I think a lot of the last year of my life has been trying to develop my ability and improve upon my ability to, I have not gotten to the point where I could sit there and just have a conversation with that voice in my head type thing, where we can have a reasonable conversation and I can, go through all of these experiences and learn and do whatever and kind of dissect things. But I have at least gotten to a point now where I'm like, all right, well, this voice keeps telling me that nothing's ever good enough. I'm never good enough. Other like external things are never good enough. If I can't reason with them, I'm just going to not listen to them. So it's like, oh, you could do better. Like, oh, you could do this thing. You could do that. And it's just like, just boom, shut it out. Just don't listen to it, more or less, is, I guess, where I found myself.
And if you look, like, we talk about how those experiences that you have as like a kid or growing up define like how you think in your reality today. Like, we are programmed to be so fixated on outcomes. Like, you watch the World Series, you watch the Super Bowl, it's all about like winning that outcome and that achievement. But then you find out when you start achieving things, the achievement itself is pretty unfulfilling. And then you want the next best thing. So if you can shift your perspective to affirm yourself and feel good about yourself for accomplishing the process, like, I think that makes it much easier to feel wins day to day instead of fixating on these like external outcomes that are kind of unfulfilling.
Yeah, I can speak on that as well. I think what you're really after, like if you keep asking like why do you want that goal? It's like, to me, it's like to feel a certain way. Typically, you don't want to get jacked just so you can move heavy objects. You want to be jacked or, physically strong because you have good character traits, right? You want to be strong mentally. You want to be like, be able to protect others or like stuff like that. You just want to be like strong at your core in your character more than I think you want to be able to lift a whole bunch of weight. Like you want to feel strong. You want to feel courageous. You want to feel these certain things. So I think just working with your goals towards how you want to feel and like focusing more on who you want to be as opposed to what you want to achieve can be helpful as well.
And it's like independent of anything that you accomplish, you have the tools and the ability to feel however you want right now. Like you don't have to accomplish anything to feel happy. Like though that is all external gratification, but you have to have, again, the discipline to control your emotions and control your internal ecosystem so that you are feeling, define, how do I want to feel? What is the life that I want to live? And then live it today. There is nothing preventing you from doing that other than yourself, which again, I am guilty of it myself, but it's something to like, work towards. But it's profound to say, or the implications of it are super interesting that you can we have the ability right now to live the exact life that we want to live. And I want to just kind of follow up on my last point too, where I was talking about like those experiences that gave me the confidence to continue and be successful and blah, 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 that affirmation. The opposite can happen. And I kind of want to warn the audience about it. Like I see this all the time where people come to my company and they have this goal that they set to have success at the company. And that's their internal goal. But then they barrel down the path and they hit this adversity and then they shift and they're like, I'm going to go to a different goal now. I'm going to work for a different company. And they jump, and I call them lily pad jumpers. They just jump from lily pad to lily pad. But through my experiences going through the process and achieving my goals, that's become my reality where I think that anything's possible. If you're doing the latter, your reality will start becoming that I never achieve my goals. I just jump to the next thing. And that's how I make excuses. And it was that last opportunity was the problem. And that's why I'm going down this path. So my advice would be pick small goals that put you outside of your comfort zone a little bit and do whatever it takes to achieve that goal. Even if you're in a job that, especially if you're early in your career, even if you're at a job that you're like, this doesn't seem like my career, don't be so quick to just jump to something else, because if you get into that pattern, it will start to define you. Do your best to, if you're okay, I'm going to switch to another job, set a goal first. Okay, before I go to that other job, I'm going to make sure that I can at least leave on a good note on this job, or I can set some parameter that is I will feel good about myself if I achieve this. Instead of getting into that pattern of coming up short, because that will be your reality. And I think that is a pattern that I see in a lot of people right now.
How would you feel? I'm curious. I have a follow-up question to this as well. Is how would you feel if everything in your life for a semi-extended period of time, let's say a couple months, if everything in your life just everything was going according to plan? How would you feel internally if everything just seemed to just the cogs were greased up, everything was going smooth, your relationship was great, everything was great in your life? How would you be feeling about that?
Yeah, so I don't know if this is the answer that you're looking for, but for me, when I run from perfect situations, and maybe it's unhealthy, but turmoil is comfortable for me. It's what I know. And we talked about this, today with the Elon Musk book that we're reading. Elon Musk goes back to that turmoil that he encountered when he was a kid. And I'm in the same boat. I feel although it's painful for me, I'm addicted to that pain. And that's something that I need to work on. I will, if everything's perfect in my life, it's like, it's uncomfortable for me. And I'll go into a self-sabotage to get myself back to that turmoil that I'm comfortable with. So is that healthy? Probably not, but it is like psychologically like my character makeup.
Yeah, I would say myself, if everything's going well, I'll get bored in a sense. So maybe like I've had times where I'll kind of go into like bad habits or something like that and just kind of like retract, I guess, how I'm being and what I'm doing. But I'll try to add another challenge. Like what's something new that I can aspire to while maintaining what I already have and kind of hopefully appreciating it while I have it.
And it's like a hamster wheel. It's like, when does the chase the hunt over? Like, when can I just be like,
yeah,
like this is it? And I don't know that that is ever a thing. You know,
I've always just been an avid believer. It's like, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I think a lot of people say it, you know, in a joking manner, but like, I genuinely think that'll be the most well-rested I ever feel. It's just when I finally fucking go down, dude, die with my boots on and just, I don't know. Cause it's, again, I know for like people are capable of change, you know, I know that for a fact, but the question is, where does the end of that threshold lie? Because I don't know. I'm very, very similar. I relate with a lot of what Jack's saying. You know, there's been times where business got too good or things were just going smoothly. Everybody was showing up on time to do stuff. Invoices were on time. It was like everything was just going well. And there I'd be at the bar until 3 a.m. getting pissed drunk, going home, getting a shitty night's sleep, waking up feeling like shit. And it's like, you know, you're sitting there over that cup of coffee hungover, like, why the fuck did I just do that to myself? Mm-hmm. And it was, if I read deeper into it, you know, it was literally because everything was going fine, like everything was going smooth. And I was like, I need some chaos here. Like if I don't have, I learned to thrive in
self-sabotage.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, like oftentimes when you start reaching success that you weren't in whatever area that you weren't maybe used to, or, you know, wasn't typically like comfortable for you at some point. And that's why I think visualization is so helpful, just to be comfortable in those elevated states of like doing well in certain areas. But I think you miss out on your foundational actions and kind of the inputs that you have when you start to possibly get cocky or something like that. Like you're not taking care of like your health and sleep and just these basic things that can help continue that process in a upward trajectory, I guess. I'd also add, kind of touching on a little bit of the points you guys mentioned earlier. To me, you know, always aspiring to, or seeing like, hey, is there, you know, a better girl out there for me or something, even if you're happy in the one you have, and stuff like that. I think, what was I gonna say?
Always aspiring.
Yeah, I basically that, like, I believe that people can do anything, but as you grow older and mature, you realize that time is your constraint that everyone has. So you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So you can have these focus and lily pad jump, but if you are able to find one thing or, you know, a few things that are fundamental to who you are and like the life you want to live, I think that's definitely more important than just trying to try everything or go everywhere and like whatever it may be.
That's super good advice. Yeah, definitely something I struggle with.
Yeah.
Keeping that focus.
Myself included. I think that's how I learned it. And it's like a double-edged sword with all these things that you guys are bringing up. You know, and like the negative things from we call them negative, but I try to at least be like, you know, this may have happened in my past, but it's led me to have the urge and desire and like fire in my belly to go out and do something with it. You know what I mean? I don't think a lot of people reach certain heights without this, possibly like a sense of lack in their childhood that they try to aspire to kind of offset that and improve themselves in a certain way.
There's not a doubt in my mind that if everything was just kind of like hunky-dory growing up, that I'd be working a corporate job.
Right.
Happy as can be in my 9 to 5 with my white picket fence.
It's a good point. Yeah.
And I think about it with like, or when I raise my own kids one day, there's like a balance. It's like you can have like complete happiness which usually leads to like lack of success, or you can create, have the turmoil and they're going to be really good at like overcoming adversity, but they may have to deal with some of those psychological like hardships that I have. So it's a balance, and there's no like perfect formula for what, how much of each you should have. So it's interesting. It's like, kind of feel like whatever's meant to be will be.
Mm-hmm. You almost have to give that power up too. It's like you almost like the things that you almost try too hard on. It's like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. Like raising children, like I think about that constantly, man. Because if you were to ask me what my ultimate purpose is, it is to pass on my bloodline to a son. Yeah. To raise children, but for there to be a male involved in those children. But it's like you almost get to overthink, like, okay, let's say like, maybe we got a nice house, maybe we got nice vehicles. Like, how do I give them that grit? It's like, do I buy a trip? Do I violence? Do I like jump them? Like, I don't know, like bang pots and pans when they're 2 and 3 years old, like at random hours of the night. Like, I don't know, like you want to instill those values, and you almost don't want too much comfort.
How have you guys, I guess, learned about these values? Like, I know personally I've learned like more recently through like philosophy and stuff like that, just like how to orient myself in the world. And I would attribute a lot of it to my parents first, but also like my coaches growing up. So like, I feel like sports taught me how to be a part of a team, how to lead some people. Like, I've just learned a lot through sports and in many capacities, I guess, in forms of like forming my character and how I go about things.
Yeah, I'd say just pay attention. Like, the patterns are everywhere, and you can find inspiration in anything. But it's being like a better listener and like trying to learn those lessons and pay attention to like social dynamics and like reading and learning, and always being a student is the best way to like get these principles,
For sure.
And it's suppressing ego. Like, it's realizing that you don't have all the answers, and there's so much to learn out there,
Yeah, I think that's something I've just been thinking about lately, is whenever you think you're an expert at something, like, just keep learning. Like, there's always more to learn, or like a new avenue. These things that we, maybe you read a few books on something and then you're like, you may be like a subject matter expert in a sense, but there's just so much more in depth that you can go into these things. It's always just interesting to me how much depth these subjects have and how deep you can go into them.
That's why I think a lot of times, like when you see young entrepreneurs that manage to build a successful business, if you look below the surface, almost every time, for the ones that have made it, you're going to find some level of deeply rooted insecurity. And I think that honestly is what catapults them into that position, because they don't think I never thought shit of myself, dude. I was like, I had to achieve these external attributes and hang the trophies on my wall so that when people came into my space, I could just point and go back to work and be like, here it is, here's the proof, like whatever. And I think that when it comes to that, though, with that sense of like, I ain't shit personality type, it led me to surround myself with people that were a lot fucking smarter than me. And I never had an ego problem when it came to asking somebody else like a question like something I need an answer for. Or it's like, hey man, like, I don't give a shit. Like, you're in better shape than me. I'm in the gym. It's like, hey man, like, what should I do? Mm-hmm. What should I do? There was never an ego complex for me because I didn't think much of myself. I don't know.
Yeah. There's like, I like the quote, I don't know if I'm enlightened, but I know that if I think I'm enlightened, I'm not.
Right.
It's like, yeah, like the second that you get that ego and like you think that you know everything, it's like, then you certainly don't know everything.
Yeah.
I keep watching these videos, or like I watched this one documentary on YouTube semi-recently by Brian Rose is his name. He did this documentary on one of those ayahuasca retreats and stuff. And like I have never taken psychedelics in my life, but I've always been so fucking intrigued by them. And I don't know if you guys have any experience or have looked into any of it.
I've never done an ayahuasca trip. That sounds like kind of like a once in a lifetime. I don't know. Have you done a trip like that?
I've never done ayahuasca.
No.
Yeah.
I've always just been so intrigued by the fact that like this guy, he did a full on documentary. It's like an hour and a half long. And this dude comes back from this retreat and basically 10X's the company that he had started 15, 20 years ago. 10X's this thing in a year span of time.
I think that just taps into like how the only thing limiting ourselves or what's going on is, or, you know, basically like your only limitation is your thoughts and like how you go about things. And to me, it seems like those are just experiences that open up your perspective on what is possible and like thinking in creative ways and stuff like that, as opposed to, you know, following a textbook on how to grow a business. It's not always going to go like that.
And you can have like 5 years of experiences and a 2-hour long, you know, mushroom trip. And you're going to have much higher awareness on like the implications of those experiences. So that's why it's like profound for people. Yeah. But my takeaway on psychedelics is this, and this might not be popular opinion, but from someone who's done a lot of psychedelics, I mean, I'm completely sober now. I don't do any like drinking. I don't do any drugs. Been doing that for years. But in college, you know, I was down for it. And it was profound. I keep using that word, but it was, they were intense experiences that definitely changed me. But what I've found out is that for me, that is like when you get a video game and you have the cheat code book and you get all the cheat codes, like for a second it's fun because you get all the new guns or whatever, but then it's like, okay, like the whole fun of the game was like getting to like unlocking that stuff. Uh-huh. And I've found like with psychedelics, it starts out super, super profound. That we should get a counter on how many times I've used the word profound. It starts out super like intense, and every time after that, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Whereas things where you have to work for, like meditation, for instance, you can achieve all those same states and get all those same insights that you would get from a trip through meditation. But in the beginning, it's not as profound. But each time that you do it and through your practice, it just gets better and better and better and better and better. So, and I think that's just like a lesson for life. Like anytime you take the easy way out, it has collateral damage. It's the like hard work in the process that has the real rewards. And I've found a lot more satisfaction out of, like meditation or exercise than things that require hard work to get achievement than the easy way out, like having a mushroom trip.
Right. Yeah, I think I've thought about that a lot. Just those things that, you know, the delayed gratification of these practices that you can contribute a lot of time to and still not see like the results you could get if you did like mushrooms as opposed to, or, you know, in different matters, but just being able to like find that fulfillment in the process. And I think that's a better way to live, like instead of seeking these short-term pleasures and that sort of thing, just finding things that fulfill you and have that compounding positive, or like, you know, they basically bring like an upward spiral to your life as opposed to the things that could bring you down in the same, you know, in the opposite manner.
And I'd find myself like in like a trip, finding this insight and being like super aware of my life and the decisions that I was making and like getting this information that there are things that I need to change. But the second that I would exit that trip, I would be back to like the person I was before I took the mushrooms 4 hours ago.
Right.
And I didn't like change that journey. I might have some new information, but like how much I implemented it was a whole nother story. Like I wasn't implementing it, maybe some of it, but not like a ton of it. And because I'm not earning it, like through achieving those insights, through process, through hard work, through meditating every single day, I'm changing through that process. You know, like I'm changing as a person each time that I do that, each time that I'm disciplined enough to put in that work. that evolution is what's causing the changes in me. If I was just getting that short-term gratification, it's like, it's not as, you don't get that change. You know, you might get a little insight, but implementing it and having the discipline, you don't earn that discipline.
Mm. Yeah, it's less meaningful if you don't earn it.
100%.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Are you going to go off on a completely different subject matter here too, but I've seen you're involved in some kind of fighting.
I am, yeah.
Tell me a little
been training in Muay Thai for a little over a year now.
Are you new to it? Like as far as this year is concerned, how do you like it?
I thought new was like first couple months, and now I realize like I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm still a beginner in my eyes, but I have a good foundation now.
How has that journey been for you thus far?
I'm all about it. I think I needed a good challenge, and it brings a great community of people that are driven, and every time I'm in there, I can see people that I aspire to be like. So it's a great environment for me. Teaches me a lot, or has me driven more towards discipline, especially in the physical realm of like self-mastery, if you will.
That's very cool.
Yeah. If I know I have a competition or a fight coming up, I'm going to be eating clean. I'm going to be like getting my sleep on point. If you know somebody's coming to knock you out, then you're going to be a bit more dialed in than if that's not on the table, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Jack, I think we talked on your podcast about Jack's, you said your fitness routine basically is like that you can't focus on just one thing. So you kind of just do like sporadic activities or like go play tennis or this, that.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, not a good thing, but I bounce around a lot on a lot of hobbies, and I've trained combat sports like jiu-jitsu and boxing. I think that there's good business applications for both. Business or negotiation is in some sense a power dynamic. And it is very helpful if you're in a negotiation, knowing that at the end of the day, if it ever came to it, like I could physically beat you. Now, I don't think that, the better path to having good business relationships or good negotiations is a non-adversarial communication or non-combative or non-confrontational path. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot more confidence in that situation if you know that the person across the table, like if it did come down to it, I could physically alter them.
Dude, that's so awesome.
I think
Jose taught me that.
Yeah, I think it plays into your confidence as well. I would recommend it for anybody that hasn't tried like a martial art or anything. And also to me, similar to negotiations, I think it's all about like angles. Like how are you set up? How are you orienting yourself? Whether, it doesn't need to be combative, but like knowing their weak points and how you can kind of extrapolate that out and dive into that or in a fight, get to their weak points or that sort of thing. Just having those angles, I think, is an important aspect that relates to both.
100%.
I think any male with like even average, maybe not today's average, but like average or above average levels of testosterone, like I think that internal monologue is going on. Like I'll be hanging out with like buddies of mine I've hung out with for fucking years, and it's just like
I could take it.
Yeah, I could break his fucking leg right there. Yeah, dude, one side swipe, I'm taking that kneecap. Like
that's great.
I think it's just there's
primal.
Dude. There's definitely a primal nature in every one of us, and it's like no matter how much we or society or societal norms, for that matter, want to suppress that, like it's there.
I think you have an ability to share your masculinity in a way that is I feel like you're grounded in your masculinity and you're able to express things, even if it's like, I think your post or your story the other day of like guys running through the rain, trying to avoid raindrops, like just like little things like that, I think are, need to be, I guess, talked about, or it's good to see, if you will.
I guess I found a lot with like my content is at some point in time, I almost needed to get like a little comedic about it, where it's like, it's not like, I'm not literally sitting there like, look at that little bitch boy running in that rain. No, like I just saw this guy scrambling and his His wife's trying to get the stuff in the vehicle, and he's like, oh, I better not get wet. Like, fuck. Like, you know, and I had just gotten back from a hunting trip, you know, and I'm just sitting there like, fucking bitch, you fucking bitch, like, boy. I'm fucking, you know.
No idea.
But like, I felt like I had to get comedic about it to an extent for it to like hit home for more people. Because I was very, I think, sincere about it, like to the point, you know, especially when I was first starting to create that kind of content where I'm like looking right in the camera. I'm like, to be a man, you gotta do X, Y, you know, it's just stuffy. And in reality, like, I think that suffering and laughter to me are two things that solidify male bonds, like between men. Like whenever I'm like the guys that I'm the closest with, we laugh and we suffer. Yeah. Whether it's we go to the gym or we run out of gas on the highway, I call them up, boom, or we drive the truck off into the ditch, you know, and we got to get out. We got no cell service. Like it's the male bonding experience is just like, to me, built through that. And I think laughter was the piece of it that I was missing for a long time.
I see. Yeah, I think that's where Muay Thai has helped me, just like embracing my masculinity. It's not like I enjoy yoga for those benefits, but I don't want to be sitting in, what is it? What's the one pose where you like grab your legs? Happy baby? Yeah, I don't want to be sitting in happy baby for a single minute any day, but I'd spar somebody like whenever. You know? Like I enjoy that, and I think I'd rather embrace that kind of suffering.
We're driving up here. I'm talking about like loving yoga. You're like, this pussy.
No, I do yoga all the time. I did some this morning, but no happy baby. It was more some other stuff.
Hey.
I'm in downward doggy style.
Yeah.
For real.
Yoga was I had a buddy of mine introduce me to hot yoga. This was like 5 years ago, before I even moved down here. And he was having all kinds of like back issues. He had broke his back playing football in high school. And he was like, yeah, you know, I'm doing this yoga thing. And I could tell like there was hesitancy in his voice to even tell me. Yeah. Because he knew what was coming. Like my next line was like, you're a fag. Like what do you mean? What do you mean you're doing? What do you mean you're doing yoga? You know, whatever.
Right.
And he's like, no, dude, like he goes, I'm telling you, like it is fucking, mind you, this kid, buddy of mine, close friend of mine to this day, like he was a linebacker for Georgia Southern, like built like a brick shit house. And I'm like, damn, I mean, I guess if you're trying it, like I'm down to go one time and like experience this. It was such a sick experience, dude.
Really?
I walked in there with just like a head full of ego of like, oh, this is going to be cake. Like I'm just going to stand around and fucking do whatever the hell I got to do. Man, I was just like drenched in fucking sweat, slipping all over the place. And, but I remember it ended and they did this, like, you kind of just, they're like, okay, lay in the most comfortable position or whatever. Yeah. Dude, I'm just like starfish, drenched in sweat, and they come around with the towels with whatever, like lavender towels or some shit. They put that on, dude. And I'm sitting there and I went into like I definitely had some extent of like a DMT release, or like I was in like a, what do they call it? Like a lucid dream state.
Right.
Because I'm just like, all of a sudden I'm just, boom, I'm sitting by this waterfall and the water's flowing, but I can hear the voice of the girl still coming through. It was just such a sick experience.
That is amazing.
We walk out, my buddy's like, not bad, right? I'm like, we can't tell anybody about this. And I bought a membership that day and I just kept going.
Nice, man. Yeah.
It's so sick.
We were chatting earlier about how, at least I had the perspective, I don't know if you may share it with me. I don't want to speak for you, but I think yoga is a great lead into like a meditation. Like instead of always being just like a workout as yoga, like I use it to prime myself and like control my breathing and those sort of things before I use it as a tool going into meditation.
Yeah, like the Western outlook on yoga, like here it's like a workout exactly. But in Eastern cultures like Hinduism and Buddhism, like it's a lifestyle, like it is a religion. And it's way more than just like, it's way more than a workout. It's a way to align the body with the mind, and yoga is to yoke. It's like you're yoking essentially your need to give in to temptations by having that alignment with mind, body, consciousness.
Are those the chakras or something?
Yeah, the chakra. So they're essentially in Eastern cultures are trying to achieve enlightenment. So you have to like you have to get rid of all these distractions in your life and control these energy centers, which are your chakras. And there's a lot more to it than that, but you can't achieve enlightenment until you've like figured out like symbiosis in the other areas of your life. So it's like, you know, that's kind of hippie-ish, and like you could say it's woo, but it has like a lot of implications that I think are profound.
I think it's cool, just these like basic practices that people can implement. Like I don't know why it came to mind from that, but like I think there was a S&P 500 index of just the CEOs that like lift weights that look like they could bench like 225 or like something like that, and it was like just double. It was like, no, these are the people you want to, you know, follow, and they're gonna do
that's
well because
hilarious.
they have, you know, good practices or something like that. But yeah, I like, you know, to me, people go into these things to, like, I didn't start Muay Thai because I wanted to kick someone's ass. Like I wanted to join it to gain like these character traits and like have more confidence and like be like in a better shape and like stuff like that. So I just think it's interesting how these like simpler habits can kind of help transform people's lives, and kind of like you said with the chakras, like mastering like one area so that you can move up to the next and kind of like ascend your being, if you will.
And it's just a framework, right? Like it just gives you like a map to like some greater goal. And there's different ones for different cultures, for different religions. And like, it's just which one resonates with you that's going to be beneficial to your life.
You guys both meditate?
Oh yeah.
I do.
At least an hour
Daily.
a day.
All right, but both you each get your 30-second elevator pitch. Sell me on this meditation stuff, because I'm telling you, I'm one of those guys that's like, I've just never even probably sat down and tried it. I've maybe experienced, like I've done breathwork stuff, I've done like workshops and things, but true meditation is done on your own. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think I can articulate this pretty well, and I've like analyzed why it's beneficial. And I think it is one of the most powerful tools that I have come across in life. And the reason being is this. So first of all, what is the practice of meditation? There's a number of different practices, but the one that I'm most familiar with is like you are focusing on a meditation object. So you set an intention to focus your attention on a predetermined meditation object, which is typically the breath, or it could be a mantra, like you see meditators like Om, like that is just something to fixate on. But I utilize the breath. So you're fixating your mind on the breath. Now, through that process, you've set the intention that, okay, for 15 minutes, I am going to focus on the breath exclusively. And your eyes are closed, you're in a control environment. That seems like an easy task, right? But within a couple seconds, for a beginner meditator, you're going to find your brain is thinking about something else. And so the practice of meditation, that's okay that your brain wanders. The practice of meditation is to recognize that your brain has wandered and then bring it back to the meditation object. So that's a rep. And how you gauge if you're advancing in your practice is, one, you're sustaining attention on that meditation object for longer durations of time. And when gross distractions distract you from that meditation object and take your mind off of it, how quickly can you recognize that and bring it back? The quicker that you're bringing it back and recognizing it, the better you are at your practice. So again, this is in a controlled environment, and it's very, very difficult to do. I mean, I've been doing this for 5-6 years now, and I'm lucky if I can get like in the early stages of a meditation, like 3-4 minutes of sustained focus, which as time goes on, the durations get longer and longer. But now look at this in real life, right? We set these intentions all the time. Like I know internally that I need to work out more because I need to lose weight because it's affecting my health. So I set this intention and set this goal to work out 3 days a week for an hour a day. And I do it for the first week. My attention's on it. I do it for the second week. And then next thing you know, like this trip takes my priority. And all of a sudden I get off this routine. And now my attention is on something else. And I've completely forgot about this intention that I set previously that's going to be beneficial to my life. And so that happens all the time where you get off this path that you set this intention to be on and you never come back. But in real life, you should recognize, okay, I've gotten off the path. How quickly can I get back onto like my life goal or my life purpose? So it is like a small workout where you're getting reps on something that has a profound impact in the goals in your day-to-day life. And I think that is why it is, why it's important. Like if we have attention, right? And then we have this like introspective awareness. So when you're on the highway, you drive down the highway, your focus is on the car in front of you, right? But your brain, so that's what you're thinking about, but your brain's actually taking in a lot more data, like in your peripherals. So it's seeing all the cars on the next lane over and the buildings on the right side. Although you're not consciously thinking about it, you have your conscious attention on the car in front of you. If your introspective awareness picks up a car accident happening 2 lanes over, it's going to prioritize that car accident over what you're looking at now and move your attention. So that's like happening on all the time with your brain is, so you set this intention to have your attention on this goal, and your introspective awareness will start to prioritize other things. But what is interesting, or what you have to be conscious of, is like, so say, for instance, you want to quit drinking. Like when you drink, that chemical has been anchored in your brain. And your personality, your thoughts, your brain chemistry has recreated your personality to get this substance within your brain. So although you set that intention to quit drinking, quickly when your body is lacking that chemical, it's going to reprioritize something else, and it'll start changing your personality, your emotions, so that you get distracted and get off that path and put that substance back in. So through that meditative practice, you can get a lot better at recognize when you've gotten off of your attention and bringing yourself back to it. Does that make sense, or was that just completely fucking unhinged?
That was a very well articulated response.
Yeah.
One may even say that was profound. that was a profound explanation of meditation.
That's hilarious.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think if I had to, I'm not going to go down rabbit hole like that. That was awesome. But in like 30 seconds, I would recommend it because to me, it just gives you a new perspective on your life. I think you're able to get outside of yourself and your emotions a little bit. And to me, what I gain from it is the habit of being more present throughout my day. So like the presence of just focusing on your breath and like being where you are is helpful. And I think you're able to appreciate kind of like smaller things in life, whether it's like the sun shining or just seeing a friend or laughter and these little moments, you can kind of feel more present and appreciate them more. I think I had something more to say.
Refresh the browser.
Yeah, I got to meditate more. I got off track there.
and there's another practice that I'm familiar with, which is it's a different goal through meditation. It's a visualization meditation. So in the visualization meditation, you're like, visualizing some outcome. And why that's a practice that people utilize is when you go into this like imaginative state, and this happens like why manifestation is profound, blah, 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 if I say this word again, I'm literally like, I need to find a word that is like interchangeable with.
You know what's great too is I think I can search the transcript on a video and I'm definitely gonna have a counter going.
I'm in double digits. Right now. But so when you are in like a imaginative state, when you go into a meditation and you imagine something, it makes neurologically what's happening is your brain becomes more neuroplastic. So your brain is unable to differentiate between an experience like actually happening and you imagining it. So it's real to your brain. Like that's why like someone who thinks about like a trauma that has happened can go into that panic state very quickly because your brain, when you start visualizing it, can't tell the difference. Is this trauma happening again? Like, am I drowning again? Or am I on a plane again that's crashing? And you start going into that panic state. So that, I mean, is bad in a trauma sense, but it's important because if you can get yourself into this neuroplastic state, you are able to rewire your experiences. So let's talk about that trauma, for instance. Say you have a trauma that you have a fear of flying, right? Because of you hit turbulence when you were a kid. So you have now associated this neural pathway in your brain that fired when you think about flying, also fired when you had fear. And those two neural pathways connected. So that those experiences have been anchored. Fear to flying. And that experience, when you think about that experience, when you're in that moment, it is firing neural pathways, right? And the longer that action happens, it becomes a memory. So there are a couple ways that a memory can be created. Like it's again like an important experience, something that is something that I'm going to just use the word again. A profound experience.
Can someone rack them up, baby?
Give me an interchangeable word. Like I sat there for a second.
I can't think of a word that.
I literally can't think of one. So a profound experience happens to you. That is going to, because a big emotion happened, that is going to create that burn in that neural pathway like a tattoo. Or a repetitive thing that happens to you, something that happens over and over again will also burn in that neural pathway. So now that creates your reality. So your reality now is within your brain, fear is associated with flying. So you can go back into that visualization state and visualize this experience of flying, and you can rewire it with another emotion. So like a practice that I learned through an NLP book is like, say you had this fear of flying, you would visualize this state where you're in an airplane and you want to visualize it from the third person. Again, because if you're visualizing it from the first person, you're going to go through that trauma again. Whereas if you're visualizing it through the third person, you can get that same data without your brain thinking you're experiencing it because you're just watching it happening. So you start visualizing this experience. And the deeper that you can go into that visualization, the more detailed that you can create this picture, this movie, the more neuroplastic and the more real it will become to your brain. So now it's like, here is this like plasticity in this experience. Then in the practice, you would go and visualize, you'd put that picture to the side and you'd go and visualize a experience that makes you extremely comfortable, where you feel pleasure, where you feel happy. So for me in this practice, I would picture like going down a wave and surfing. So start creating this detailed visualization of this experience that makes me feel good. Then it would say, take these two pictures now, and you're driving this all through your imagination, and layer the picture of the flying over the picture of you surfing. So you have these two photos in front of each other, and you're just driving it through your imagination. And you would poke a hole through the picture of you in the plane. And it would say, like, now you're asking yourself, like, to let that light emanate through the picture in front. And so it's like, okay, are you starting to feel like that feeling of pleasure from the back photo, like resonating within this image of you flying? Like, okay, now you've gotten it to the point where I'm feeling that pleasure within this image of flying. So now close that hole down a little bit. Is that pleasure going away? Okay, open it back up again. And as you're like visualizing this and going through this practice, your brain is literally re-anchoring this experience of flying with this pleasure of surfing. And it rewrites that neural connection, so you now associate flying with pleasure. And now it's not going to happen overnight, but the more that you practice it, the more that it biases you towards that, the more that it re-ingrains that emotion. So that's pretty profound. You can do that in anything.
I would agree. That I've never heard of the practice done in that way. I really like the way that you literally layer it and kind of like incorporate it together and connect those two.
And that's just a practice. Like, it's the science behind it is that your brain can't tell that the experience is happening or not. And you're basically just imagining a different experience in that same situation to get your memory to associate, like reassociate those two things.
Yeah, I think tying those positive emotions to past experiences can be helpful. I think what I wanted to mention earlier was also just the aspect of having better emotional mature, like being emotionally mature, or having that, the understanding that you're not your thoughts or your emotions that are coming up, and you can kind of have that control that you mentioned earlier, in terms of just where are your emotions and how they fluctuate, and understanding like you can incorporate that not only in your meditation practice, but then bring that into your life. Like, are things going haywire and you're really feeling a lack of control, but you can kind of come back to your breath and take a deep breath and kind of assess things from a different perspective. Yeah. Have you listened to or dove into any of Neville Goddard's work? Mm-hmm. You're not familiar. I've read like some of his books and listened to a bunch of his stuff. Basically, he has many practices in the meditation and manifestation space, but one of them is the revision technique. So basically, at the end of the day, or even if it's a past like traumatic experience that you still are not sitting well with and you have like a negative emotion towards, he basically says go in and revise the day or revise that encounter or that situation, kind of just being able to rethink things from, realizing like, hey, maybe I tried this with good intentions and it didn't turn out well, but I can go in and revise the day in my head and just have an idea of how do I move forward as if this went well, that sort of thing. So not like lying to yourself, but saying like, how would I ideally have had that encounter go, stuff like that.
And it's very similar, like you're reassociating that like thought and that experience through that visualization. And like there's some pretty insane science. Like they did an experiment where they took college basketball teams and they had them shoot free throws, these 3 control groups shoot free throws, and tested them before the experiment to see what their averages were on free throws. Then they took one group of free throw shooters and had them continue practicing every single day shooting free throws. They had one group stop shooting free throws, don't even think about basketball. Then they had one group just visualize themselves shooting free throws and practicing. And then they tested them again after they had conducted this experiment in this time duration. And the group that practiced every single day grew the most. I think it was like 15 or 20% increase in their free throw percentage. The group that didn't do anything actually declined. And the group that just visualized increased by 1% shorter than the people who actually did it.
No way.
Just through visualization.
Yeah. Oh, where did we leave off?
What you were saying just now about like the running thing is, I think like running, lifting, like regardless of like the physical activity, I have always had to have some kind of physical activity. I think going to the gym and lifting weights has been like my foundation. Like that's my constant. Mm-hmm. I've recently started doing, I guess, like the hybrid training stuff, where I'm incorporating more of the distance running and stuff like that on a regular basis. But I think it's like, I feel like working out or like physical exertion is like the only time that I really get a break from my craving for chaos. It's the only time that my craving for chaos dissipates in my brain is when I'm like, and it's again, it's like people describe that runner's high is like once they reach a certain point. And I feel like it's reaching a point of physical exertion where your brain has to reallocate its like thought and energy into just one foot in front of the other or one movement after the other. It's very interesting to me.
I think it's like those times where you push yourself to require all of your focus on that present moment and kind of pushing through that. And I think that's when you find out like who you really are or like where your limits are. It's always fun to challenge yourself.
It sounds to me like this. I'm super intrigued about this meditation stuff now. I mean, Jack certainly has made a hell of a sales pitch on it, but like I'm so intrigued by it because it sounds like it's like the full on mental version of what I just described that like working out physically is for me.
Yeah, it's a mental workout. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Which I could see that bleeding into all kinds of things.
Yeah. And if this is not enough evidence to like turn you, this is one other case study that I can think of. I think I talked about this on a call a couple weeks ago or a week ago, but the Navy SEALs were investing all these resources to recruit like people from the military to go through the Navy SEAL training process. And like less than like 10%, I'm going to fudge these numbers, but you'll get the point. Less than like 10% of the people that they recruited were actually making it through BUDS training, which was like a big waste of money for them. So they brought in one of the top psychologists in the world to analyze their Navy SEAL training and come up with a framework that they could give to these people that were entering the training to increase the results of people that would graduate successfully. And it's very interesting what he came up with. Very simple. It's a very simple framework. One is that when you are within a task, like say you have a 100-mile run to do. If you think about, I have 99 miles left, it's going to make it a lot more difficult to do than to just fixate on all I need to do is just get this next step done. And then this next step done. Or I just need to get it to that lamppost. And then once you get to that lamppost, set the next goal as the next lamppost. So breaking it into like very small attainable goals instead of thinking about I have this huge thing left to accomplish is number one. Number two is to create your own cheering section within your head. So it's positive self-talk, like positive language and affirmation within your own brain. 3 is to picture or visualize how good it will feel when you finish successfully. And number 4 is when all else fails, focus on the breath. And with those 4 things, they increased, I think it was like by 15, 20% in Navy SEAL conversion rate by setting small goals. And these are all principles that we've talked about on the podcast today. Setting small attainable goals, positive self-talk, visualization, and focus on the breath. Like, which I think is pretty insane that those like really like, they seem like woo, principles when implemented can have that much of a result on people that have to perform at the highest level, which is Navy SEALs.
I think there's wisdom in the simplicity of that. Like a lot of times I've read plenty of books and that sort of thing, or just went all over the place to find certain pieces of knowledge. But it's like, if you have so much knowledge, a lot of the time it can be conflicting and you get confused and you're not sure who to follow or which blueprint to go with or what time frame to set your goals on. But if you can have, a simple foundation like that, I find it to be very helpful.
Yeah, it's something you can always go back to.
When you talked about visualizing yourself on the airplane and you're looking at yourself from the third person, have you ever, or is it even possible to have that third person visualization go on, and have you ever looked yourself in the face?
Yeah. And I mean, you're driving it through your own imagination, so it can be whatever you want. Like, but yeah, you can look yourself in the face, and obviously it's going to be a projected externalization of what you think you look like in that situation.
That's super
driven by your imagination. Yeah.
Done like sometimes I'll do a meditation where, to gain perspective on myself, I will more or less like detach my consciousness from my body and like just do a visualization of like, all right, I'm like leaving my present self and I'm going to travel to, you know, in my imagination to a different time, a different place, whether that's past, future, or anything like that. But I think it's helpful to realize that, you know, you're not always like, I think there's a lot more to us than just our physical body. Like we are more of like consciousness and that sort of thing. And meditation helps me to understand that and realize it, and even implement it into like my physical training, like knowing that my mind can continue on or my body can continue on as long as my mind is willing to kind of go down that path.
That stuff is super interesting, man.
Yeah. And like you can go, like going off of what you just said, like there's so many implications of that. Like if you think about when I see you guys, it's just like a perception. Like really you're just like all these like this energy and atoms that are communicating to each other, like that are next to like the air, which is more atoms, which is next to these walls, which is more atoms and energy. But I'm perceiving Craig and Colden, right? And I'm seeing these bodies, but through these like data receptors through my senses, these data receptors that have a lot of error to them. But like, for example, like if you're an ugly kid and you're not getting with like a lot of girls, or like you're not getting attention from girls, like I am under the firm belief that you can literally like change your look through like changing your mindset and like changing your energy and changing your confidence. And when you do that, people will perceive you differently. Like they will see you differently. Like if you change your energy and you change that, like you're going to look different, or you are going to their data receptors are going to pick up that data differently than if you're in a like lower frequency state.
Mm-hmm. I think it even goes down to like, how do you dress yourself? How do you groom yourself? Like these simple things, like people are going to perceive, like if you look at a bum, if you will, they're probably not well maintained, or, you know, they have just this aura about them that is not very pleasing. Whereas if you look at somebody that's at the top of their game and they're doing things well and have a good foundation, then you can just sense that as soon as they walk into a room.
That was the exact word that was like kept going in my head, is that aura seems to be the word that people are using now, but frequency kind of is what it was, I feel like, always referred to as. But
yeah, just like radiating energy.
The other interesting like observation from that too is like when you if I perceive myself as someone, like to take it the next step further, is like maybe you see yourself as someone who carries himself well, is more chiseled, is this, that, and the other thing, is like that next step is, well, what does that version of myself do on a day to day? It's like, well, he doesn't miss his run in the morning. He goes and he works, and then he goes and works out again. And he, like the activities as well, I think are driven by that. As like, for me, I think probably 90% of the time when I don't feel like showing up to do physical activity and I do show up, I'm showing up because I literally see myself as the guy that shows up when he doesn't want to show up. It's not so much like beyond that, I couldn't even tell you what it is beyond that. Discipline to me.
And a person that doesn't do that can shift and change into a person that does do that.
Bingo.
And that's why, like, you know, people talk about, again, these are just practices and frameworks, but like, it's like, why is doing affirmations in the morning like useful? It's like, because you start creating that language in your brain that like, I am a beast, that I do show up for myself. Like, and eventually it becomes your reality because you change the way you think.
No, I think that's cool. And like, I've had I use most of these tools in a sense in some capacity, and they're always evolving because I'm trying to improve on them. But like, to me, you should get to a point where you're hitting goals and you get deja vu when you hit your goals, because you've visualized it so many times. It just like, you're just like, yes, of course. Like I'm here. I've arrived. What's next? Like that kind of feeling.
And it's a crazy feeling.
It is.
When things happen exactly how you visualize them, which they typically do.
You're like, whoa. Like
Yeah.
I just did that exactly how I saw it.
Which reaffirms that it's possible.
Exactly. And I think it's good to start with like smaller things, but then like you can obviously build up and keep challenging yourself or do it in a different realm and that sort of thing. But it's a unique experience to have those kind of moments.
And I think it's like the takeaway that I would say is that, like, for anyone watching this, like, you fully have the power to change and to create the person that you want to be, whoever that is, and live the lifestyle that you want. Like, pick the instant that you want to become your eternity and live it today. It is 100% possible. The only thing standing in your way is yourself and your own internal limitations. So identify those internal limitations, do the work to get over them, and you will start embodying whoever it is that you visualize or whatever goal or whatever environment.
People, I like, the concept of the compounding interest of marginal gains or 1% better every day. Like the whole marginal gains concept, I certainly agree with the philosophy behind it. But I think that one of the negatives that comes with that being such a loud voice within the self-improvement space is, what about that guy that doesn't have time to improve 1% because he's negative, 4,000? Like he set himself up in a position where if he got just 1% better every day for the rest of his life, he'd still be in a pretty shitty spot come the end of his days. And like, I think that there's also room to understand that you are capable of far more change in a far more shallow time horizon than you can fathom. Like people who are, I look at people that are, drug addicts, or a lot of the podcasts I watch, it's funny how a lot of extremely successful entrepreneurs were drug addicts or, had a drug history. It's like you see guys like that, and the stories tend to be similar, where it's like, yeah, like I hit rock bottom and then it was done. Mm-hmm. Like, they completely changed their trajectory.
Yeah. They set a new standard, I think, for themselves.
At some point in time, they went to sleep at the end of a day, and they went to sleep a drug addict, and they woke up never to touch drugs again. Like to me, that's just, the word profound came to my head. It is that's profound.
Truly.
To me, to be able to, you can just change. You can change everything about yourself.
And a lot of people wait for that catalyzing moment. And like that is helpful, and some people get lucky to have that catalyzing moment that gets them to change. But I think that you can generate it yourself. You don't need to have an external experience. You can do all the work that you need internally.
Mm. Yeah, I think I found that to be helpful myself. Like I would, at times I would like wait for like an external thing to either make me need to urgently change or to help me to change in a positive sense. But I think just having the ability to realize and like take responsibility and just decide like, this is my intention, and anything that doesn't get me closer to it is not going to fly from here on out.
And it's like, this is something I toil with a lot. Like, it's easy for us to say, right? Because we have the foundation, and we've like had that catalyzing moment, and we've had the experiences that have set the foundation for us to be able to do these things. But how do you go to a homeless person and say like, buddy, you've got the power to change? Like, they've already got these layers of disbelief and low self-esteem and defense mechanisms that are going to be like, it's going to be so hard to like push that principle through to them. There's going to be so many layers that you have to get through for that to resonate with them. So is there like a framework, and how do you create that catalyzing experience for a person and get them to change? It's much easier said than done to like get someone to, because it takes a decision for them to be able to change. And I'm sure both of you have experienced this. Like, you see someone so clearly incongruent in their life, and like, it seems so easy to you. Like, you could have everything that you want if you just do this. and like still they don't do it. It's like it's difficult to communicate that change. Like it has to come from themselves.
Right. Yeah, I think they need it would need to be internal, like you said. I think there is something to like relating to these two people on in whatever sense, but like saying that you've had a similar experience, or like trying to hear them out and like really like having them break down, I guess, what their limitations are in their head. And also I don't think that it's not always easy for like a CEO to talk to a bottom line worker if they haven't talked in like months or something like that. But if the CEO is able to share their vision with the company or share stuff on social media and it resonates with somebody else that is maybe like one step ahead of the person that it's ultimately reaching, I think having those kind of the tiers of it can help break down and share that message and share that inspiration, as opposed to just people that are on opposite sides of something trying to relay that information.
Yeah, if you have the communication, like the communication is so important. And like, you know, I think there's so much isolation in society, and that's how people get like that. But if you're a leader and you do have something to offer, like be helpful, help people, and like try to pick people up, and naturally surrounding, you know, people and giving your energy is going to bias them towards you. Where, you know, these homeless people and they're just isolated, or, you know, just for example, and they're surrounded by these like chaotic, tumultuous environments, like they're going to become a product of that. Where if we had more sense of community, I think that it would have a ripple effect on the rest of society.
How would you say like that sense of community has like impacted your life, I guess? Like, was there, I don't know, times where you noticed you didn't have it and then you sought it out, or ended up in a scenario where it was helpful?
Yeah, you always like succumb to your environment. And so I've always just, again, it's discipline. Like you have to have the discipline to surround and create the environment that you want to be. So early in my entrepreneurship career, I was like, I need to find the people that are living or embodying the lifestyle that I want to get to. And if I surround myself with them, then eventually, like inevitably, I'm probably going to adopt a lot of their ideals, their habits, and become like them. But if I'm saying that I want to have big houses and nice shiny cars, and I'm hanging out with drug addicts, like I'm probably going to eventually succumb, or it's going to be a lot more difficult to achieve the alternative when that's my environment. So,
absolutely.
What does as far as you guys are concerned, like what do you believe to be your purpose? Like what is that thing that drives you on the days that you don't necessarily feel like hitting the road?
Yeah, I think in terms of my own personal development, it's basically just becoming the best man I can be in multiple realms, and trying to inspire others to do the same. And like my vision of who I want to be isn't going to be the same as yours or yours, but I think like if people are at least trying to make progress and thrive in their own lives, whether that's at, you know, when they're at their worst or when they're accelerating on upward, I think just keeping that ambition and trying to continue on and make the world a better place as a result of your own personal growth is pretty influential.
What is it that drives you to want to do that?
I think I've been helped a lot along the way. It seems like it just feels like a good challenge to me. And I feel as though when I'm not doing those things, or when I feel off, or when I'm frustrated with myself, it's when I'm not doing the things that I know I could be doing to impact the world in a positive way.
Awesome.
This is a really hard concept for me. I mean, I could go down another really long rabbit hole on this, but to kind of give the cliff notes on it, it's difficult for me to define like what is my purpose in the world, because they don't make a playbook for it. And that's where like a lot of people like resort to a religion or whatever, because like it gives them that path, right? It gives them that direction. And so like learning the things that I've learned where I feel like within my reality, you have the ability to accomplish anything. It's like, okay, if I can accomplish anything, then how high do I want to set that bar if I only have one life? So that becomes another question. It's like, what is the goal that I should set? And I think that it's come down to like, you know, internal happiness and impact is a big one. Like I want to have an impact and leave like a legacy behind that has a positive impact on the world. But then even that is like a tough debate because it's like, what is right and wrong? Like you get into the ethics debate. It's like, I have what I think's right or wrong. Is that true, right or wrong? And like, how can you get any absolutes in this world? It's very difficult. So I think like, you know, for me, it's impact and like my own internal happiness. But I think you just got to kind of go with your gut. And I think that everyone internally has this like compass that you shouldn't ignore. And you have these convictions and this intuition of what is right and wrong. And it may be different for me than what it is for you. And for me, that's like what God is. And that's what divinity is. It's like this singularity that connects all people that moves the universe forward. And it's very difficult to pinpoint like what is actually occurring. But in some sense, like every decision, whether one person says it's right or wrong and I say it's right or wrong, and how you define it and what your perception is on it, we are like all moving in some direction. And I don't have control of that path, but I have control of how I perceive that journey. And I think that's what free will is. Like you have the ability to legitimately live and perceive whatever reality and outcome that you want. It's again, just having the discipline to execute it.
Yeah, I think I've struggled with that sometimes, like trying to find the perfect blueprint or the perfect end goal. And then I'm like, oh, well, it just always keeps evolving. So I think as long as you have good intentions and like a good, what's the word, attitude about how things are going, you know, whether they're going good or bad, just having a good attitude and continuing on is going to be helpful. What would you say?
I think I struggled with it too. You know, Jack's absolutely right. You know, there isn't a playbook for purpose. And I think I've finally, the most clear that my purpose ever was in my life was when I stopped trying to overcomplicate it. And I just was like, you know, it's like I can do all this higher power stuff. I can do this, I can do that. The other thing, it's like, maybe I could just simplify it all. Look at the generations of men in my family that came before me and just look at what they used to instill in their sons. And really it just boiled down to like, I would like to create a family and I would like to raise children who are better than I ever become. And in whatever capacity or realm that entails, like it doesn't mean they have to go out and, oh, you better start more businesses than I ever did or make more money than I ever did. I don't give a shit about that stuff. It's just like to raise children that can go out and be better people than I ever was. And I think that that's really like what my purpose has boiled itself down to. And then offshoots of that, of course, are, and this is why it's like, you don't have to just have one singular purpose, you know? You can have a multitude of purposes, but I think that it's best to just have a narrow focus and have a few of them to really channel your energy towards. And like another one is very similar to yours. You know, I look at other young men, I understand what it's like to struggle through certain things and to see other people struggle through certain things. And I would like to be able to help them to perhaps expedite their process of building themselves into someone that they can be proud of when they look in the mirror. Do you believe in a higher power?
What do you mean by that, I guess?
Like, would you consider yourself a man of faith, or like, do you believe in just like something flows? Like, what why do you believe that we're all here? Like, it's a hard question for me to even ask. So I understand if you don't answer, but
it's a great question. I would say that our bodies are used as a tool to evolve the souls, like to evolve spirituality, to live and to feel and to understand things. I see life in a sense as symbolism for a greater being. I just believe more spiritually in like total oneness with the world, but I'm not sure if that was very clear.
I'm trying to dissect mentally what you just said. There's been a lot of brain fucking going on today. Like, so you don't believe in a central, I guess, like necessarily a higher power, more or less just that all things are intertwined kind of thing?
I definitely agree with the latter statement, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. I'm always intrigued to hear, what people's perspectives are on, or their belief systems are. Because I think that it's so interesting to me. Like, I know I've got friends in all different walks of faith and life and things like that, but how much it can change and alter the way they see the world. It goes back to like the meditating on stuff and your upbringing and having these little moments. And like, for them, it's like, something bad, something like tragic happens, something that could be a potentially traumatic experience for a kid. But in that moment, they're based on their parents or the way they approach it. It's like, this was God's will type thing. And in the future, they can something really awful can happen, and they seem to be able to kind of like go through it in a peaceful way, as opposed to like having this, like, again, this fear or this like anger. They seem to almost be at peace with like these traumatic experiences. But it's always kind of intrigued me a little bit. Walk me through, what we got, 28 minutes. You guys down to do one more segment?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. To kind of wrap things a little bit here. Walk everybody through like kind of like what your day-to-day looks like, the multitude of businesses or operations or whatever it is that you're doing. Like, walk folks through a day in your life.
All right. I wake up pretty early and typically just try to get into some like yoga, meditation, and journaling and visualization. Those are like 4 or 5 key things that I do every day. Not always exact like first thing, but typically at least two of those 4 and get the rest done. And then typically go right into some work. I like to have a few blocks of time where I can just focus and get work done. And I find that it's best to do in the morning before other people are up and moving and people are reaching out or on social media and stuff like that. So a good morning routine, get some work done. Then I go for my first workout of the day, and then typically just come back, get some more work done, go for a walk to break things up, and kind of progress like that. Another work block, and then my evening workout. So I typically do work out, I guess, twice a day, but it's not always like the same thing. Sometimes it's just foam roll and do some yoga or go for a jog or a walk or something. Other times it's like weightlifting or sparring and other Muay Thai training. And then by that time, I'm typically done with work. I like to have more like focused and intensive time in the morning, and then more like outreach and like tying up loose ends by the later work session, where I may not have as much focus or willpower by that time of day. And then besides that, it's just more so socializing, kind of finishing up some things. I like to have like an evening routine of similar to like my morning, where I do like some reading or kind of wind down my brain, as opposed to watching like TV or doing anything like crazy high intensity. Just kind of wind down towards the end of the day. Is that clear, or any questions on it?
Maybe just add a little bit of detail on like you mentioned your work blogs. Like, what is it? Mm-hmm. What is it that you're working on?
Yeah, working on building out an online mastermind for men to come in and work on basically ascending that hierarchy of needs. So you have like your physical wellness or physiological needs, and then your financial wellness, moving into like your safety needs, right? And then as you continue on, you would have the esteem needs. So that's like your emotional well-being, and then the social aspect or social wellness relating to that love and belonging needs on the hierarchy. And then the final two would be intellectual, and I relate that to your self-actualization needs. And then the final level, or the top tier of that, is going to be spiritual wellness or your self-transcendence needs. So basically helping people from wherever they're at on that journey, and kind of reiterating and helping them to evolve wherever on their way to total wellness.
Awesome, man. Very cool.
Absolutely.
Jack, what's a day in your life look like?
For me, like someone who naturally like is very chaotic and disorganized, like my personality type, it's very good for me to have routine. It creates structure in my life, but it's not my natural impulse. So the more that I complicate my routine, the more that it's difficult to be accountable to. So I have to have just like non-negotiables that I stick to. And I think the main ones are just like every single day getting up and working on my business, like no matter what, like pushing the needle forward. And then having a to-do list of like things that I need to get done as a good way to like take it from out of my mind where it's disorganized and like put it into an actionable plan. So those are like things that are, again, non-negotiables for me that I like make sure that I do. And as long as I do that, I'll survive in the business world. But there are other things that, I implement. Like I think exercise is really important in my life. The more that I'm exercising, the better that I feel, the more productive that I am. Do I do it consistently all the time? No, I fall off. Meditation is another one, like exact same as exercise, super beneficial to my life, improves my productivity. Do I do it all the time? I try to, but I fall off sometimes. And then, reading is another really big one. Like I try to implement reading into my routine because and maybe not just reading, but constantly learning. Very easy for me to constantly learn. I naturally do that, but all the good stuff is in the books, where you get the more detailed information, which takes a little bit more discipline for me to obtain that knowledge. So that's something I try to discipline myself is on a daily basis, reading portions of books. So I'd say those are kind of like my main like habits. And then a day-to-day work like schedule for me is typically like doing some sort of sales, like pushing the revenue forward in the company. That's the most important part of my business is like, if we don't get sales in, everything else falters. So that's first, second, and third priority. Which again, that's like a natural thing. It's easy for me to get on calls, easy for me to close deals, build relationships. The part of my business that is more difficult, that takes more discipline, is like the housekeeping, the more operational things. So I have to contribute a certain amount of time to those operational tasks, which it takes a lot of energy for me. It really drains me because I have an ADD type where it's difficult for me to just focus on that one task to get done. So I have to be disciplined about the environment that I'm in, that I'm in a clean room with not a lot of distractions, or else it will take my attention away. So those are things that have to get done. And it's like, okay, if I know that I'm going to have to get them done, no one else is going to be able to hold myself accountable. What are the habits that I have to put in place, or what discipline do I need to have? What are the non-negotiables to set myself up for success? So I have to be super conscious of those things, because if I'm not, then I'm not going to be successful and the business fails. So I have to be, again, keep repeating this word, disciplined in these habits, or else I will succumb to my natural bad habits.
Awesome.
That's great. I wonder.
I think your battery's dead there. Yep. We might have finally run to the bottom of the tank, boys. But,
fair enough.